Welcome to the September meeting of DCC. Before we start, I've got some general announcements to make. Please ensure, well, first of all, the fire alarm goes off. It won't be a drill, so get out as quick as you can, the way you came in. People, please ensure that mobile phones are switched off or on silent. Apart from councillors can be using the Modern Gov application on phones to access the document pack. The meeting is being recorded for live and subsequent broadcast, unless we go into a confidential session over exempt items, which I'm not expecting us to. And by entering the council chamber, anybody at the back of the room is de facto consenting to being filmed. I think members are well aware that if you wish to speak, raise your hand and wait for an invitation to speak from the chair, and all debate is through the chair, not across the chamber. And remember to turn your microphone off when you finish speaking. Please speak as loudly and clearly as you can, for the benefit of members of the public and people watching online. And if you're referring to a specific report page or slide, mention the report page or slide so that we're all on the page, the same page. Before we start, we've got some new people. We've got Councillor Moira Shannon, who's joining us for the first time. And we have Joel Hunziger, who's our BNG officer, who hasn't been to DCC before. We were going to have a new principal planner, who's just started with us, Lucy Atkins, but she can't be here tonight. But we're going from strength to strength in planning. What we need now is some more ecologists. Right. Okay, so apologies. I've got apologies from Councillor Piercy. I think apart from that, we're all here. And not aware of any declarations of interest, but if anybody feels they do have one, stick your hand up. Nope. Okay. Minutes. Everybody okay with me signing the minutes as a correct record of the August, was it August meeting? No, we didn't have one in August. What is it? Is it July? I can't see. July meeting. Yeah, thought so. Everybody okay? Just pop your hands up if you're okay with me signing as a true record. Thanks. Okay. So, item 4.1, we're on the planning schedule. It's the only item only planning application on the agenda tonight. It's, as I'm sure you all know, 31 Kings Hill Road, Dursley, adaptation and extension of existing car showroom into an education facility, use class 2. Case officer is Nick Gardner. Nick's going to introduce his report now. Okay, Nick.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. Yep, we're at 31 Kings Hill Road, and here we go. So the site is within the settlement of Dursley, being very close to the core of the town, where there is a presumption in favour of development subject to other material planning considerations. It's a long, narrow site, measuring approximately 52 metres in length and 15 metres wide at its widest, and it narrows down to 12 metres. The former garage, so this is the existing elevations here, and associated structures vary in height and include single-storey flat roof elements and a two-storey gable frontage. Some demolition has taken place, with Harris fencing in place to prevent parts of the site from being open. So there's a raised footpath to the opposite side of the road, which is in the very bottom corner photo. So there's some site photo context and then the main map in the middle. So that is to the west. To the rear of the site or east are playing fields, which are designated as actual play space within the local plan. The Dursley Garage premises and filling station are set to the north, and a social club abuts the southern boundary of the site. The application falls within a sensitive heritage setting located approximately 30 metres from the Dursley Conservation Area, which is indicated by the red hatching on the map in the middle. And it's also in close proximity to Grade 2 listed buildings, which include Pike House to the north, so the one in isolation, 2 to 10 Parsonage Street at the bottom, which is within the core and has Tabernacle United Reformed Church opposite. The site is also within the setting of Kings Hill Garden Suburb, which is a non-designated heritage asset, which is the housing cluster just which is opposite, just set up on the opposite side of the road. The site also falls within the catchment of the Severn Estuary Special Area of Conservation, and as indicated by the pink highlighted area on the map, it's in proximity to the Cotswold National Landscape. So that's the very edge of it there, just to cover that. The application proposes the adaptation of an extension to the remaining buildings of the former garage site to form an adult education facility, C2 use class. The proposal is car-free with no parking provision. The proposed adult education facility is intended for 18 years plus and proposed to offer courses around holistic therapy, treatments, aesthetics and well-being. The maximum number of students on site at any one time is indicated as 100, with 25 ensuite accommodation rooms with shared living facilities for 22 for students and 3 for teaching staff. Very limited information has been provided in terms of the need for the specific type of educational facility, and no information is provided in terms of the qualifications that will be available, although it's understood it's for adult education. How long these courses would before and also what term times are likely to be, although it's indicated that it would be closed over Christmas. These are the proposed elevation. So you can see the building is proposed to be 3 stories, infilling the site. So the whole site, as the built form currently is, it's to cover the site, and it is of a varying height. So from here, we're just over 9 metres down to 10.8 to ridge, and I've given eaves heights there just for reference as well. The land levels change to the back of the site, so it is slightly lower to the back, so the designated play space is set slightly up. There is a refusal reason in relation to design. The proposed development, by virtue of its excessive height, unbroken massing and bulky horizontal form, fails to respond appropriately to the established character and grain of the surrounding built environment. The design is overcomplicated with detailing that lacks coherence and does not successfully upscale into a building of this scale. The double gables, small casement windows and prominent staircase features are inconsistent with the architectural language of the adjacent garden suburb and nearby heritage assets. Furthermore, the scheme does not work sympathetically with the site's levels, resulting in a visually dominant and poorly integrated addition to the street scene. The proposal lacks the finesse, proportion and material quality necessary to reflect the local vernacular, and as such would appear incongruous and intrusive form of development, therefore has been deemed to be contrary to local plan policies of CP14, ES12 and ES10. This leads into and is joined to the heritage refusal. That echoes many of those problems that by reason of its form, scale, design and detailing would result in visually intrusive and incongruous addition, and that it would cause less than substantial harm to the significance of the heritage assets and their settings as mentioned. So in the absence of sufficient public benefits to outweigh the harm, the proposal conflicts with the requirements of the Planning and Listed Building and Conservation Areas Act 1990, Section 16 and paragraph 215 of the National Planning Policy Framework, and contrary to our local plan policies. The full planning balance has been set out within the officer report in relation to heritage, and the MPPF requires the public benefits of the scheme to be balanced against the heritage harm. As set out above, the design form, mass and bulk is not appropriate to the context and the details submitted as part of the application. The public benefit therefore fails to demonstrably outweigh the harm caused. Other material planning considerations have been considered and appraised within the officer report, and they surround highways, ecology, biodiversity net gain, drainage, contaminated land, waste minimisation, environmental health. They've all been subject to consultation and full consideration, and have all been subject to that, are all considered acceptable, subject to conditions in the event of a planning permission. The final planning refusal reason is in relation to the Severn Estuary for the special area of conservation. No mitigation has been secured in relation to the Severn Estuary and the likely significant impact that the proposed residential accommodation could give rise to, due to the site being within the core catchment area. because there's no bespoke mitigation that's been submitted, it would therefore need to be secured by the Stroud scheme of mitigation, and a HRA assessment has been undertaken by the ecologist and consulted on with Natural England, who in late pages it's been confirmed that there's no objection from Natural England, and so should the development have been permitted, or with a recommendation of permission, we would need to be in receipt of a completed legal agreement to secure that mitigation. So it represents a refusal reason because we do not have that. This concludes the officer presentation.
Thank you, Nick. Can I assume everyone's seen the late pages that were sent out? Nobody needs a minute to look at the paper copy? Okay, fine. So public speaking. I got ward members, Councillor Bob Hughes and Councillor Helen Hughes. Who's going first? You don't have a time limit, but as I always say, we appreciate brevity. Helen, you're going first? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. For those who don't know me, I'm Councillor Helen Hughes, Dursley Ward. So firstly, thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm here to support the planned development and to set out my reasons why. It's not acceptable, in my opinion, to reject this proposal purely on subjective or design grounds. It's a much needed amenity, bringing life and jobs back to the town centre. Dursley is a working town. It may be the edge of the Cotswolds, but it's not chocolate box pretty. The proposal is situated on a commercial strip of land between a neon lit garage, the Dursley Tabernacle Church, which is probably more than 3 stories and hosts our local youth club, and a 3-story former BT telephone exchange. All completely different, all great examples of that mix of purpose and design that typifies Dursley Town Centre architecture. Far from creating heritage harm, this proposal brings back vitality to this area. The applicant has hard practical evidence of increasing the footfall in Dursley Town Centre, bringing vibrant businesses, tourism and variety. Dursley is a walking town. We see young people walking to and from school every day here, and this proposal even has the benefit of on-site accommodation, removing the need to put more cars on the road. But my real focus today is the unmet need. Local people still remember the 2009 demolition of the Dursley Education Centre, the nearest thing Dursley had to a college. That need has never been properly replaced, either for young people's further education or for local retraining opportunities. And now that need is being met not by the public purse and is broadly welcomed by local people. These facts aren't being recognised. We in Dursley need a college because transport to other further education colleges is patchy and unreliable, with buses few and far between. FE skills courses in Stroud of the sort proposed here have been closed, and the nearest South Gloucester College campuses focus on arts, technology and sciences. Great if you have that kind of brain, not so much if you have neither the talent nor aptitude for such courses. Now, it's been suggested that students can travel to other South Gloucestershire colleges in the region, such as Filton, near Bristol, or the Forest of Dean. Now, my own education was blighted by daily travel via public transport, and that was in London, where buses are plentiful. Dursley to Filton takes an hour and a half on a good day. Dursley to the Forest of Dean is less than 20 kilometres as the crow flies. But for us mere mortals, it takes nearly 3 hours each way by public transport. I wonder how many people in this room spend 6 hours of their day commuting or would consider the costs reasonable in pursuit of learning a trade. And there seems to be some kind of snobbery about valuable practical skills, such as beauty treatments and therapies. Yet these are the special treats that complement the tourism that comes to this area and brings much needed local income. And not just that, the skills needed to set up businesses in these fields, as proposed in this development, don't seem to be valued either. My late mother was a careers advisor. both for post-school and university students. As someone who's supported by my dad, achieved her own potential in later life, she argued that not everyone has academic talents, and that's okay. Some people are better at using their brains, some at using their hands. The brilliance of this college proposal is that it balances both the practical skills to deliver a quality service and the business skills to make it a success. Sadly, I wasn't privileged to meet Sir David McMurtry in person, but I heard plenty of stories about his vision. Everyone I talk to has a positive tale to tell, giving people less academically able the chance to improve their job chances, helping restore the centre of Dursley as a vibrant hub once more. This proposal is a part of his legacy, creating another innovative building, creating jobs, and creating opportunities for local people. It's also a tribute to his concern for Dursley, and I will now embarrass the proposer by applauding his efforts to make that vision a reality, with new high street shops in Dursley and the award-winning Leaf and Ground venture as great examples. I commend this proposal to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Bob, again, you don't have a time limit, but brevity is our friend.
Sure. Again, for those who don't know me, I'm Bob Hughes, one of the other ward councillors for Dursley. Dursley has a proud tradition of commerce and industry, from its 18th century marketplace through the 19th and 20th century, with the Lister Engine Company, Maudsley's, Bimax and the Bailey Newspaper Group. Sadly, these large companies have closed, and although we still have many local shops and businesses running successfully, anything we can do to boost local jobs and growth has to be a good thing. We're fortunate that the world-famous Renishaw Engineering Company has a number of premises locally, and that the founder, Sir David McMurtry, lived locally before his sad death just a few months ago. Sir David, as Helen was mentioning, was instrumental in supporting local young people through apprenticeship schemes, and his family continue to encourage those local businesses. They recently won the Leslie D. Gale Award for services to the community. And successes have included the Leaf and Ground Cafe and Shop, the Bank Cafe, the King's Head Pub, the Spring Villa Bar. And Dursley Football Club would have folded in its 125th year without their support. The applicant, Phil Pridmore, Sir David's son-in-law, has been a key player in those and now wants to bring us his ideas for a much-needed college in Dursley. He was behind the excellent design of the award-winning Leaf and Ground and has now submitted the proposal before the committee tonight, a model of which you've hopefully seen outside. This will provide, again, as Helen said, much-needed jobs for the area, and more importantly, sowing the seeds for young people to be successful in creating their own small businesses through gaining skills and guiding them on how to run a successful business. The planning team have, not unreasonably, challenged some aspects of the submission, and the applicant has responded and adjusted the proposal, although it doesn't appear to me that the applicant's responses and rebuttals have been fully included, thus leaving a rather negative overall theme to the report. For example, on page 30 at 9.21 of the report, it talks about large external staircases needing to be internalised. Well, these are fire escapes. And they've got brick and rendered walls up to the first floor to stop people outside climbing up the fire escapes. So that's why they're external. We're now at the stage where the only remaining objections are subjective around the design and scale of the building. The applicant is investing a huge sum of money into this. He's designed it well, using oak, slate tiles, reclaimed brick, lime rendering, and a steel frame to ensure there's no need for the environmentally damaging demolition of and transport away of the existing concrete on site. I know some committees have visited the site, driving or walking past the Texaco petrol station and the car repair workshop to the north of the site, or the brick-built telephone exchange from the south. I'm sure you will have noticed the construction work going on the sports pavilion behind the site, a breeze block construction that managed to get planning permission. You'll also have noted there are no vantage points from which the full scale of the building will ever be seen. You won't see it, you'll see the end as you walk up the street, but there's no way you can stand back and look at the whole supposedly imposing exterior. From the playing fields to the rear, much of the building will be blocked by the pavilion that is being extended. To the existing ground floor, an oak pergola and a slate roof are being added. The slope of the land means it's effectively 2 stories there. At the front, there is mention of the garden suburb, but that's hardly relevant. It lies mainly to the north and west of the garage, and they don't overlook the development, although some may be lucky enough to have a view of the neon-lit Texaco garage. On page 31, paragraph 9.34 refers to it as a prominent and strident feature, although it is lower than the also mentioned Georgian Terrace further down the road, which I suspect if that had come up to for planning application today, we probably wouldn't have approved the rather beautiful Georgian Terrace. Paragraph 9.48 raises concerns for neighbouring occupiers. Well, that would be the car workshop, the petrol station, the sports bar, and the sports pavilion. I'm not convinced they will feel oppressed by a college for trainee beauticians. So, we come down to a trade-off between the visual appeal of the building versus the public benefit of the education and employment opportunities it will provide. I've been talking to a few local people and discussing it with them. My favourite response was, well, it would have to be pretty bloody ugly to vote against it then. So, councillors, far from ugly, this is a blend of traditional appearance and modern innovation in the best Dursley fashion of doing it differently. Please vote to approve this application.
Thank you, Bob. And now from Dursley Town Council, we've got Councillor Toby Stride. You can use the public microphone. As you probably know, you will have a time limit of 4 minutes. It'll be up on the screen. So if you keep an eye on that, and I'll give you a warning if you're going over. Okay?
Okay, I'm Toby Stride. I'm Vice Chair of the Dursley Town Council Planning Committee. You'll see our representations, which were quite short in relation to this, at 8.1. In brief, we supported this application. We both liked the proposal in itself. It brings life and work to the centre of the town where we need both. We also like the design, the mock Tudor elements reflect both the entrances to the conservation zone of Dursley Town Centre. There are mock Tudor buildings at both ends already, so it complements these well. So we supported this in brief and continue to do so. In terms of the previous applications for this site, we were less happy with the proposed housing development there, which we consider to be overbearing, overcrowded and generally inadequate. Those were granted. Also relevant perhaps to this application was the application S23-1926 for the adjacent garage, which proposed turning it into a glass-fronted building, to which the conservation officer commented, the proposal will not cause any harm to the character of the conservation area or the setting of the listed building. So we see an inconsistency there. In the past, this has been a very active site. It was the former print works of the Bailey Group newspaper, which was our local newspaper, so it was heavily used by that extensive employees at that site. And we also agree with the demolition of the existing building. I was part of the group that looked at the local heritage assets, and we saw little virtue left. There was very little of the original use of the building and very little that was of interest from the car showroom and sales room. So, in short, we would like to see this development happening in Dursley. We think the benefits significantly outweigh any other factors. Less than 4 minutes.
Thank you. And there's nobody speaking in opposition, so I've got Mr. Pridmore, who I believe is the applicant. And as with Toby, you'll have 4 minutes. They'll be up on the screen, so if you can keep one eye on that, and I'll let you know if you're going over.
Firstly, thank you all for taking your time to consider this application. I've been working very hard for over a decade now to try and improve the town that I live in, and I've seen some success along the way. I've been encouraged by my father-in-law, Sir David McMurtry of Renishaw PLC, the founder, to go out and try and help people, but not through charity, more through helping people help themselves by creating businesses, which then can create jobs and wealth. And that can persist way beyond any one-off donation. I've done this mostly by renovating empty buildings on the high street, and just investing in them and then offering them to the right people for a low rent to get them established and to let them flourish. And I've had a lot of success with this, and it's encouraged me to do more. And hence I went on to do Leaf and Ground, and I've been looking into Dursley and what it needs, and it desperately needs education. And I think this would be perfect to have a further education facility to help those that maybe haven't done as well academically to have a business of their own. And so I will be giving them a qualification through this college, but more than that, trying to give them the tools they need to start their own businesses. So a little bit of tax, a little bit of accountancy, etc., and assistance actually setting a business up. And hopefully that will enable them to go on and have a business and to flourish and prosper. And perhaps even then come back and, rent a room from the college to then practice. So I've chosen holistic health and aesthetics. And I think it's a growing business. It's £27 billion currently. And crucially, I think it's AI proof. So, those jobs will always be needed. Further to the education facility, we will also be providing a community hall. There's the large hall that would be needed for things like speeches and prize giving could also be used by the community for various functions. The design, I know it's come up for some criticism, but I believe I've got a good track record for some of the buildings that have been mentioned, and also I have renovated a grade 2 star listed building to a very high standard, and I feel like I've had good results there and have been praised for them. I think the building that I've designed is beautiful and very much in keeping with the area, and there are it echoes various developments around the town. And to enable that and to achieve that, I'm having to use expensive materials such as oak and reclaimed bricks and lime render and slate at an expense that I don't think many other developers would go to. So personally, I think it's lovely, and if you have a look at the model, I think you may agree. Yes, about the misconception perhaps about the staircases on the outside, they are fire escapes and they are not visible for the road because they are screened by a wall. And I'm simply asking you to help me help people in this entirely privately funded venture. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right. So now we move on to questions from members. Anybody got any questions? Carol, and then Dave, and then Gary.
Just to clarify, please, Nick, every issue except the heritage issue, except the appearance of the building, could be dealt with by conditions should we be minded to accept to give permission to the proposal. Could you just clarify that for us? Thank you.
all of the other technical issues and material planning considerations could be conditioned, other than one of the refusal reasons is heritage. So that is a material planning consideration, and design, which is still material planning consideration. But yes, the technical matters could all, outside of that, could be conditioned.
Thank you.
Other than the HRA as well, which was explained in my presentation for the mitigation payment.
Yeah, that could presumably be conditioned as well as a...
That can't be conditioned, no. We need to be in receipt of a legal agreement prior to issuing of a decision for permission. Refusal, you can refuse without being in receipt, and it would serve as a refusal reason. But to be able to issue a permission, you would need to be in, we would need to be in receipt of a completed legal agreement.
But we could presumably approve provisionally on that agreement. If that is
It could be
possible.
proposed that it's delegated to the head of development management to permit, to issue a permission once a Section 106 agreement on the HRA contributions have been agreed. I think that's correct, isn't it? Yeah, Griff.
Hello, thank you. Good evening, members. Under the Council's constitution, the content of a planning obligation is delegated to the Head of Development Management. We have 6 months in which to complete that agreement to the satisfaction of officers. And in the event that that agreement is not completed within that timescale, and we are not seeing any progress on that, we then have delegated authority to refuse it. So the onus would be on the applicant, if this is where we're going, to prepare a suitable agreement within a suitable timescale, if that was with the resolution of the committee.
Thank you. Would that be 6 months from now or 6 months?
Sorry, it'd be 6 months from the date of the committee's resolution, should the committee resolve to grant planning permission.
Thank you.
Dave, and then Gary.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions, Nick. First one is, the existing building steps down with the level change, but the proposal doesn't, and has a maximum height at ridge of 10.8 metres. How much higher is that than the existing building?
Okay, so yeah, on this slide, you can see I've marked the buildings at the edge of the development, which is sandwiched between. So at the bottom end, where the proposal would be 10.8 metres tall, the approximate to ridge of that building is 7.5 metres, and then 5.5 to eaves. On the other end, it's approximately 8 metres to ridge and 4.4 metres to eaves. So if we go to the proposed, so, sorry, I've memory like a goldfish there. So 7.5 to ridge at that bottom building. If I move on, so we've got 10.8, so that's the difference there.
Good, thank you. I then have a question. So, reading the papers, there was an indication that there were some kind of informal pre-app conversations where the applicant was advised that if they applied, it would likely be refused. I'm assuming that I understood that correctly. Could you, if I did, then could you just unpack that a little bit for us to give some kind of colour to what those conversations contained, and the extent to which the applicant rejected or took on board the feedback that was given?
There wasn't pre-app discussions, no. There were discussions within the application period where we engaged with each other, and obviously we had the consultation responses as well, so from the conservation specialist. So yes, as the report sets out, the views of officers was communicated in the issues throughout the planning application process.
Great, thank you. And the feedback from yourself, amongst other things, was about the massing and the unbroken ridge line. At that point, could the applicant even though they were in the application process, could they have reflected on that feedback and presented an alternative application?
Officers were of the view that it needed more fundamental reworking than just a tweak. However, the applicant's view on the design and officers and as well as from the consultees, namely the conservation specialists, were different. So therefore, the applicant has put forward this evening is very much this is the design that they would really like to see built out.
Gary, sorry, Gary.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple of 2 or 3 questions. The first is, Councillor Hughes said that you couldn't see the whole building. You'll know the site better than me. From the other side of the road on the raised pavement, could you see the whole building? Would you be able to see the whole building if it were built?
In my view, yes, you can see the whole building. If you were in the town stood on the road and looking up, you could see the building. I mean, obviously you'd be looking at it in sections, so you would see, because it's taller, you would see it. Obviously it is then a lot behind other buildings as well, but yes, you would see it in virtue of it being taller. And then from the opposite side of the road, looking down, especially at an oblique angle, you would obviously see the expanse of the building. So yes, you would see it.
My next question is the SAC contribution. We're talking, is it 19,200 and something? Is that subject to debate with the applicant, the amount, if it were approved?
So the figure has been arrived at via a screening by the ecologist, which is then sent to Natural England. So we have an adopted strategy, and as part of that, we agreed to then send that information to Natural England for them to approve, basically, and say, yes, we're satisfied that is sufficient or will mitigate any likely impact. They have commented with no objection. It isn't something that we can negotiate on. That is the figure. In this instance, it's been arrived at with a 20% reduction in view of the proposal, as it's not just a dwelling or dwellings, it is for an adult education centre. So I think that's answered your question.
Just to make sure it has. So Natural England are the arbiter of the amount, and they're saying that thing, and we really can't diverge from that because they're the experts. Is that right?
The amount has been calculated and assessed through the assessment by our ecologist, looking at the adopted strategy that actually Natural England also, were part of to agree in the first place. And then, yes, we say this is what's been assessed and screened. So we think that this is the correct, using our strategy of 20% reduction, and this is what's required. And by saying no objection, they have agreed that is sufficient.
And my final question is, we're talking about subjective views. The existing building, are we allowed to take into account the beauty or otherwise of that building when we're assessing this application and whether the new building may be better or worse?
I can understand, obviously, the visual appearance of the site at the moment, and then also it's been permitted for other uses previously, and then they've not been built out. It's, as we always say, you've got to consider the scheme that's in front of us and whether or not that's acceptable or not, rather than the condition of the site right now.
Chair, if I may, sorry, Councillor, if I want to go back a few steps, there is a choice in how you mitigate your impact on our European protected sites, and that is either through a bespoke mitigation stream or by contributing to the council's scheme where the council manages that scheme. Where you are contributing to the council managed scheme, you do so through a Section 106 obligation, planning obligation. Under the SIL regulations, we are legally required to apply 3 tests when we are attaching a planning obligation. One is that it's necessary to the development. Another one is of a scale and kind and proportion to that development. So it would be unlawful for us to charge an amount that isn't proportionally necessary to the harm being generated by the development on the European protected site, and the costs then of mitigating that harm. So we do not lightly undertake those calculations. If I may just also, whilst I've got the floor, go to your point about the relative charm of the existing site. The weight that you're applying is the resulting appearance of the proposed building. If there's no development, then the site doesn't change. It's not like you've got something that you can balance off there against one another.
Right, yes. As big members will have seen from the late papers, the applicant was questioning the level of contribution from the HRA and the site. But as you rightly say, Natural England are the arbiters on that, and if they've agreed the calculations, then that's what they consider to be, and we're tied by legislation other than the planning legislation on that. Millie, and then, yes, Mark.
Oh, getting a big build-up for quite a small question. Okay, so conservation specialist, less than substantial harm identified. Could you just clarify that phrase for me? What's the sliding scale of harm, and where does that phrase fit into the hierarchy of harm?
Yes, so less than substantial harm, I suppose, in the fact that it says less than substantial offers an appearance that it's not much, but actually that's still in the MPPF should be afforded great weight in terms of the conservation enhancement on protection, therefore, of the conservation area and listed buildings. So it is afforded great weight, and it is not. It doesn't involve the total loss, for example, of a listed building, where therefore weight would be greater than less than substantial. So I hope that explains.
Yeah, I think that does. Yep.
If I may, we would have total loss, substantial harm. The MPPF says that both of those should be refused, almost point blank, and then everything else falls into less than substantial. So you can have less than substantial harm being a very minor thing. You can have less than substantial harm being slightly less than substantial harm. What I just need to sort of voice at this stage is that the conservation officer is trained specifically in matters of heritage. So the fact that they've come to a conclusion of less than substantial harm is a significant factor in your decision making. As Nick says, we should give great weight to the conservation of heritage assets. So we have identified that there is harm and that it is of less than substantial harm by somebody with the appropriate qualifications to do so.
Yeah, it can come across, it can seem quite misleading. It sounds like there's hardly any harm at all, but as Griff and Nick have explained, it's top level is the building's going to be demolished and lost. Next is something that's really going to do some serious physical damage to the building, and then everything else is less than that, but that's the one that we usually deal with in planning, but it can still be quite serious. Yeah, sorry, Millie, do you have another one?
Well, if I may just have a small supplementary then. So the less than substantial harm applies to the existing structure of the building. It's not a wider, it's not to the wider zone. It's just to that building, which we understand is being conserved in as much as is possible by the steel frame. Is that right?
The actual building itself, subject to the proposal, is not listed, isn't within the conservation area. So it's not the actual building itself, it's the impact of the proposal upon the conservation area, the listed buildings and the non-designated heritage assets.
Yes, Mark, and then Helen.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to look at the travel plan and the parking provision. So on page 32, section 9.37, the application is obviously proposed with no car parking and includes secure cycle parking. We understand that there could be up to 100 students or persons on site, and potentially 3/4 of those would be travelling to the site, so potentially 75, up to 75 people. What is the cycle parking provision on site for those visitors and users? I couldn't find that in the report, but it looks to be satisfactory. I just wondered what level we put on that, considering there's no other parking on site.
I don't have the exact figure. I can find it, go in and find it and come back to you later. But as broadly, obviously the applicant had to submit this information following the request from Highways and do the TRICS information, which includes therefore the assessment of the town centre, etc., for both vehicles, people accessing the site anyway, and that was found to be acceptable, including the cycle provision that is within the building, so it's not even on the street as well. So that is of a benefit that it's within specified rooms rather than being right on the street. So I don't have the exact figure of cycle parking right this moment, but it was found to be acceptable by Gloucestershire County Highways.
I've got a supplemental question as well on the same subject. I was looking for the weight that you applied to this, because I'm looking at another application at the moment, which I'm not going to discuss, but I realise that some heritage assets, some redevelopments, there is no space for parking. The only chance to get the building actually back into use is to redevelop and put it to new uses, and there's never going to be any parking provision on site. Section 9.37 does end with saying that this is car-free development is not in accordance with the local plan or the GCC manual for streets, so non-compliance there, and I was wondering what weight you put to that. And in the report, moving to section 10.7, which is on page 39, that talks about the car-free proposal. The sustainable location obviously is close to the town centre, and your report states that this is afforded neutral weight. So is that basically discounting any detrimental harm to the lack of any parking, car parking on site?
I think I would be cautious to say specific to this site. So this is the development that we're discussing. So it was afforded neutral weight in this, because they were managed to mitigate against it, or they demonstrated because of this site specifics in its site location, its sustainable location, the use, etc., that was set out, that it would be acceptable to be car free, despite obviously the policy not complying with our local plan in terms of the provision. So it was afforded neutral weight because it's not, it didn't give, it wasn't harmful, but it wasn't also a benefit. It was neutral.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Helen.
Thank you, Chair. So back on page 30, under the section Heritage Balance, section 9.25 says, on balance, the public benefits are not considered sufficient to outweigh the identified harm. And I think, Nick, if I remember rightly in your report, you said that the application was submitted without a statement of public benefits. Is that correct? No.
There wasn't a statement called that. It was that the application hasn't, the amount of information that's been provided that can play in the balance of when you're weighing up benefits in terms of the exact use of the building, what qualifications they're going to get, when they're going to be there. Is it week long? Is it monthly? Are they there for 6 months? Etc. There's a lot of information that we don't have to be able to balance out the benefits, or conversely for, say, the community use. It said that maybe the classes could be 9 a.m. to 9 p.m, but the community use then would be very small if that were the case.
Mm-hmm. So my question is that if the exact same application was to be submitted, but with more information around the public benefits associated with the application, because I feel we've heard a lot this evening about public benefits of this scheme, yet perhaps they weren't articulated fully in the application, would that change the balance overall? Or does that potentially change the balance overall?
The balance is specific to the information and the application that's been submitted, both in information but also in design. So both if the design would change, the balance would change. Similarly, if a more...
But my question is, if the design stayed the same, but we received more of the information as we've received this evening as part of the application, I presume that would change the heritage balance outcome, wouldn't it? Or it has the potential to change the heritage balance outcome if that was done. Is that correct?
Well, thank you, Councillor Fenton. You have to assess what is in front of you. What you're asking us to do is summarise something in the future. What the assessment is today is that on the information that has been provided about what benefits come from this development, it does not surpass the public interest test. That isn't to say that a different set of benefits could be presented, but I'm not going to preempt what the assessment of that would be. However, that is only on the heritage balance. We still have a design issue. So greater public benefit may overcome harm to a heritage element, and we get great weight to heritage. We would still be very keen to see improvements to the design for the reasons that we've set out in the report. You'll see that that's all in the refusal reasons. So there's an issue about massing bulky horizontal form, and the public benefits do need to outweigh that should that come forward, but we can't comment on that without it being in front of us.
No, I understand that. My question was specifically about the heritage balance, and it was on the potential for the same design, but submitted with further information about public benefits to have the potential to change that heritage balance. And I think you have confirmed that that is the case. Thank you.
Dave, and then Gary.
Yeah. My question is about the relative weight of the various refusal reasons, and specifically, Nick, I'm interested in the weight of the size and the massing and the unbroken form versus the weight of the design materials and incongruity, I think, as you mentioned in your report. So what weight would you give those to in your refusal reasons?
In terms of materials, they're not objectionable per se. So you've got the oak, the lime wash render, the brick, a reclaimed brick. The design is also the height, the form, the mass, the bulk. So they're kind of difficult to unravel from each other. But obviously, so on totality, in terms of all of those, as explained in the report, that is a reason for refusal, so it was given great weight.
Can I just supplement that with a follow-up? So a smaller building, Nick, I'm going to ask you to comment on an application that isn't in front of us. I can see Griff looking at me. But a smaller building with this in the same design with mock Tudor and the oak frame, etc., would that also have been objectionable, do you think?
Sorry, if I may, you know what my answer is going to be, Councillor Matthews, and we cannot comment on something that is not in front of us.
Gary, and then I've got Kath.
Two questions. The first is quite quick. Disabled parking. So I can understand car-free development, but that obviously poses people for disabled. Do we know where the nearest disabled parking is?
There is disabled parking within the town. Obviously, that isn't particularly close. As we saw on the site visit, there is the lay-by to the front, and there is a specific area that is for kind of drop-off or for deliveries, etc. So the building is designed for to be accessible and level and lifts, etc. So that would be an option to be able to drop off for somebody that required it. but there isn't anything designated on site for parking.
All right, thank you for that. And the second thing is coming back to this public benefit. Part of the public benefit that you discount a little bit, which I understand because of the timings, is the public hall. Are the things like educational provision and the like included in the public benefit that you've assessed?
Provision, yes. So yes, the use of the building, the fact that it's for educational use, has been included in the weighting.
Yes, Kath.
Yeah, I think you've answered the question about the public benefit. What I'd just like to, the thing that I didn't quite get was, in the past, permission has been given for houses on that site, which seem to have less public benefit than this college. So that was something that I thought, what's all that about? And the other thing that I also don't quite get is the objection to the design of the building, given where it is. It's on a main road. It's next to a pretty horrible garage up the road. When you're in the playing field and you were to look back onto the building, if you look the other direction, you've got Redknapp
Sorry,
School.
Kath, can I just make sure that you're actually going to get to a question eventually? Sorry, you seem to be
I'm
making-
saying I don't understand the objections to the design, given where it is, and also the other buildings that are around the playing field, which seem much uglier and bigger. And it's on a main road. It's not in a
Kath,
residential
that
street.
doesn't seem to be actually a question.
My
This might
question
be
is,
something for
why
debate.
is there a design objection given the location of the proposed development?
I think that's probably more about a point for debate, but
Just really, that's fully outlined in full in the officer report. I'm not sure that anything more can be added.
Okay.
I don't think it's a specific enough question to actually be able to get a
Well,
technical answer. Like I say, you can
yeah.
bring it back up in debate by all means, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. The question was, is it in a protected area? That's my question. It's not in a conservation area. It's not a listed building. What's
No, it's not in the conservation area,
No.
but the issue is the impact on the conservation area and the heritage
that's
assets.
nearby?
Yeah, I was actually going to come back on the question, that issue about less than substantial harm. It might be helpful to think, if anybody's still having issues with it, of it as being about the substance, substantial as in the substance of the heritage asset, the conservation area, the listed building, the non-designated heritage assets. The substantial, in the sense of substance, is actually affecting those assets themselves. Like if you wanted to change, but make some changes to a listed building, or demolish it. Less than substantial, as I say, it's not really about the amount of harm, it's about whether it affects the substance of that asset. When it's less than substantial, what we usually are dealing with is the visual impact of what you're going to put next to the heritage asset, of whether it looks right or whether it detracts from the view of the conservation area, the listed building. So it's like putting it's a blot on the landscape sort of issue, really. Is it going to be a blot on the conservation area, that kind of issue? So, but you can bring that back up in debate. I think that's a debating point, really. Yeah. Do we have any more questions? Anybody? No? In which case, does anybody wish to propose officer advice or something else, Mark?
I don't take this lightly because I don't like doing this, but I would propose approval.
Okay, in which case, before we go to a seconder, we'll need to work out what exactly. I mean, it's not that we need refusal reasons, because you're not refusing, you're proposing permission, but we would need really to be sure what your reasoning is, what policies you consider it to be. Okay, etc.
Chair, yeah, I would be. It comes down to the balance of those policies that were identified in the officer's report in balance with the economic and public benefits. For me, it was. It seems like there's a huge opportunity here, and there's a lot I do not like about this scheme in terms of the subjective designs, even though I can see the applicant is very passionate about the choices that are made in the materials. But personally, I don't like the building, but I think there's such an opportunity here and a track record that we've heard this evening, and such a strong voice from the town council. The lack of public comment against the scheme, and what we heard from the district councillors as well. It's that balance between the economic benefits and the benefits of educational provision in the town, employment. It's those policies which our local plan is supportive of, in balance with basically what the officer is saying in terms of the design and heritage impacts. I don't discount those at all, because I see those myself as well. I just think that's not a reason for refusal, in my opinion. And I think that's the role of DCC. So that's why I would like to stand up for this application. Is that enough to be able to... I can look at the policy numbers?
If I can, if I understand you correctly, your reason to want to permit is that you consider that the contribution to the viability and vitality of the town outweighs the concerns over heritage impacts and design and massing. So I think basically you would be saying that CP12 of the local plan, that you feel that it complies with that, and that would be your reason for overturning the balance of the report.
Yeah, I think it's overwhelming.
I think it's CP12.
It's a different weight than the planning officer has brought, but I think that's the role of DCC, and I think the economic benefits to Dursley, the planning history as well, which is not obviously a factor we can take into account in terms of decision, but the history on this site. It's a former car showroom, it's a printing works, it's next to a garage, there's a bunker of a telephone exchange. We've got to take that into account, and I don't discount the heritage aspects and the design of the building, because I think they are factors. I would just say that our local plan is also there to deliver economic benefits to our towns and villages.
Okay, yeah, I think we're definitely getting to debate now. Just establishing the reasons why. I think CP12 is quoted in Nick's report as not... is it quoted in your report, Nick? CP12? Which, as far as I can see, is probably the most relevant policy for you to be saying that you see that as overriding the heritage and design concerns. I'm pretty sure I saw CP12 somewhere in the report. But I could be wrong. Yes, Griff.
If I may, Chair, I think Councillor Ryder has been quite articulate. Thank you in your weighing up. I think your key policies, as the Chair said, are probably in our economy and infrastructure section. I think probably CP12 is the most relevant. It does talk about town centres and retailing. So under that policy, you would be looking at sort of it being a town centre use. But aside from that, I think the NPPF is clear that we've got 3 strands to sustainable development, which is a mix of your social, economic, and environmental factors. Just for the record, if I may, members, just a reminder that we shouldn't be giving any weight to lack or amount of public comments. That's not a material planning consideration. You shouldn't be giving any weight to the applicant or any track record that they have. You also should not be giving weight to a opportunity. That's too vague. But when you clarified it at the later time, I'm quite content that you think that the weight that the development would bring forward viability and vitality. You've given weight to education and economic development, and that outweighs the harm to heritage as you think the public benefits find in the development's favour.
Yeah, I think the MPPF also, well, I know the MPPF definitely contains a number of supportive, MPPF contains stuff about ensuring the vitality of town centres, building a strong competitive economy, that kind of thing. So
Is
we
CP2
could,
also relevant here?
sorry,
Is CP2 also relevant here?
in our local plan, I'm not sure, but certainly I think CP12 with the backing up of paragraphs in the MPPF, which officers could fill it out when the development if you vote to permit, to delegate authority to the development manager to permit, I'm sure we could fill those out. But CP2, I'm not sure about, Griff. CP1, sorry, I can't think.
CP1 is a presumption.
Yeah, well, yes, CP1, that's basically sustainable development, which I don't think our report has an issue with the fact it's a sustainable location, so CP1 could probably be folded in as well. So I think we've got enough there to look for a seconder. Is anybody prepared to second that? Gary, are you seconding?
I didn't actually want to second. I just wanted to know whether Mark wanted to put some conditions and to make it dependent on the SAC contribution.
Well, we can come to that if and when we if you vote to permit, then we can look at conditions. Yes, Millie.
Happy to second.
Okay, so that's proposed by Councillor Ryder and seconded by Councillor Hill, in which case we can go into debate. Who wants to, seconder usually gets the chance to kick off debate. Millie?
Can I save myself for a bit later?
You can if you want to, yeah. So anybody else want to kick off? I mean, you can, Mark, and still sum up at the end as well.
Thank you, Chair. I think I've said lots on this already in terms of my weighing up of this. And as I say, I think this is a huge opportunity for Dursley and something that is obviously needed. I think it's in the right place. I think with the diversity of building styles in the local area, obviously it is next to sensitive heritage assets. But in context to what this site has been before, other planning applications and lack of development of bringing this building back into use, I think this is a fantastic opportunity. And I don't discount, as I say, the heritage and design of the building, because I also, that's, but that's very subjective for me. So, I think the opportunity here is to deliver a site that's going to be very vibrant, providing something that is very useful for the community. And I was just overwhelmed really by the positive feedback from community, from councillors and from the town council. And I think their voice is very important in this, because so often we hear from objections to applications, developments that communities don't want in their backyard, or they want it in a different place, or not at all. And in this case, we're in a fortunate position where the community, seems to me, desperately want this development, and in spite of the concerns, and that's the weighting I put onto this, is that it's so important to listen to that local voice. So yes, it's not a perfect application, but the balance for me is definitely on the side of support. And in terms of conditions, I think there is a lot to resolve that's been identified in the officer's report. So a lot would need to be delegated, which would need to be worked out. But I'm completely satisfied that the officers can word that in a way that means we secure what we need to secure in terms of those aspects of the application before permission is granted. I think that would be very important. So thank you, Councillor Luff, for raising that.
Yes, Gary.
I share some of Mark's and Nick's concerns about the design. Having said that, Because we have the option of refusing and the applicant coming back with a better design, and sometimes that's the best outcome. But for here, we get a long delay, and I am persuaded by the public benefits. You know, Dursley is a town that will benefit from this. Our district will benefit from this. This will bring people to our district. It will keep the rest of the town vibrant. There's another 100 people spending money in town, keeping it lively. So I think that probably does outweigh the valid concerns around the design. It could be better, but we'd say that about every building. But I think what I'm hearing from the people who are representing Dursley, who know it best, is this is a very positive thing for the area. And also on top of that is that, you know, I might subjectively think, oh well, it could be a bit better, but actually the public who have a subjective view too, but a valuable view, and their representatives have a view that the some like it, some don't think it's an issue, but on the whole, certainly they're not seeing it as sufficiently detrimental to outweigh the public benefit that towns, and we see this all across our district, and much worse in other places, town centres are struggling, right? And so if we can bring positive stuff to our district and to areas that perhaps need it more than others, I think that's a good thing. And whilst we shouldn't really be bothered about who the applicant is, they clearly have that interest of the well-being of Dursley, and I think that's important and should be commended, even if we don't count that as a material planning consideration.
Demelza?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Gary. For me, I think a huge benefit here is employment. I've got a personal history with Listers, and when that pulled off site 12 years ago, the town was built around an industry that was there for 100 years. We lost that overnight. It's still in the district in a much smaller capacity, but we've lost so much employment from our little towns, and even just bringing back a few jobs here and there, I think is absolutely fundamental to some of these locations. So I have to say, from my perspective, I completely support what Mark is proposing.
Okay, anybody else for debate? Carol? And then Kath.
The risk of being boring and saying the same thing over again. This is obviously a very much needed and wanted local facility, and in my view that clearly outweighs the heritage and design concerns.
Kath, and then Dave.
Yeah, just a brief point. Relating to the public benefit again, but I really valued what was said about the nature of the courses that are going to be offered, about them being resistant to AI. There are so many entry-level jobs for young people now that are disappearing because of AI, and this college is going to be training for jobs that will not disappear. So it's kind of future-proof. The public benefit is future-proof in that respect.
Yes, Dave.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Dursley desperately needs some revitalisation. You know, there are lots of, well, last time I was there were lots of closed units, and it looks like a town that is potentially heading to being quite run down. So I think, you know, I hear the arguments for the benefits that this development will bring. I think the fact that it's focused on young people is a big advantage. So I am moved by those arguments. I guess my point is, I just wish applicants would take advantage of the pre-application opportunity, because this probably wouldn't have had to come to this committee had they gone through a pre-app, taken on board the feedback, and presented a different application with less massing and more sensitivity. So I like the fact that it's reused bricks, lime mortar, oak framing, all that loveliness, but it is going to be a big building, and if it ever changes from its current use or its proposed use to something else, then the building stays, even though the college might go. So it's really just a plea, not for this applicant, but for other future applicants, you know, please use the facility to engage with our planning team before you put in the final application, because you will get valuable feedback, and it's likely that your application will go through much more smoothly.
Anybody else for debate? If not, do you want to? Yes, Gary.
Sorry, I suspect I'm preaching to the choir anyway, but one of the problems Gloucestershire has as a county is young people leave because there aren't enough opportunities, and this is one of those things that will hopefully keep people in our county and in Dursley in particular, which is actually pretty cut off. That's the problem of our topography. To get anywhere is quite difficult, especially if the buses. I know I'm a county councillor, but our bus services aren't good enough. And that's a real challenge for people who live in Dursley. So I think that's an added benefit of having education in this town.
Okay, Mark, do you want to sum up? I think you pretty much summed up, but do you want a last quick word?
I think everybody knows how I feel, so I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. I'd just make, it's not really a debating point, just a contribution that I think it's important that we're looking at this the way we are looking at it. We're not looking at it as in officers have got the heritage impact and the design issues wrong. I mean, they're the experts, they're the architectural experts, they're the heritage experts, and they understand the legislation, especially of heritage impact, and they're saying this is what the situation is. There is some impact, there is some less than substantial harm. So what we're looking at is whether that's outweighed by the public benefit, and as far as I can see, that's the direction the debate's taken. That's what we're saying in the proposed motion. So, right, there's no more debate. Then I think we can go. So, yes. Oh, you reserved your right, didn't you, Millie? Yes, sorry, forgot about that. Go on.
Okay, well, I just want to thank all my councillor colleagues really for their comments. I agree with them all. And we have lots of school leavers in Dursley who can't afford the bus fare to get to Stroud or Gloucester or, God forbid, the Forest of Dean if it takes 3 hours. And I think this will be a really great opportunity for those youngsters. And the AI proofing of the jobs is great. I was listening to the radio just this week and hearing about the exorbitant sums that hair colourists and people like that can charge, and they are AI proofed. I think with regard to the form, how things look is very much a matter of taste, isn't it? The applicant has a record of building pleasant buildings, and people hated Dursley Library when it was first landed on them. Nobody's come forward really to object to this, one person, but that in the scheme of things is quite small. And I think it's just a really good thing, and I'm inclined to think that if you build it, they will come, and that will be great for Dursley and great for people who live there. And that's really all I want to say. So,
okay, I think Griff needs to come in and just clear up some of the technicalities of exactly what you're going to be voting on. As I've said, it's the thrust of it is that we're seeing the planning balance differently. Griff.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've been listening to your debate, members, and I have a couple of suggestions which I think would need to go into the decision to reflect your debate. One of which is that members seem to be applying significant weight to the educational use and the benefits that this bring. You've talked about the particular educational facility being AI-proof. The planning system works in use classes. So this has got a C2 use class. So I would strongly recommend, well, if you delegate conditions to officers, officers will be applying a condition that would restrict the use of the building to an educational facility with residential accommodation. You can change within a use without planning permission. So a C2 use could also be a care home or a boarding school. So I think if you're putting weight to that, officers will bring that forward. Nick's report sets out a couple of technical matters where a pre-commencement condition is required. Pre-commencement conditions, we are required by law to get the consent of the applicant. If the applicant does not give their consent, we cannot apply that, which is tantamount to a refusal. So just to inform you that there would be a need for pre-commencement conditions, and we'd be seeking in the resolution that if that pre-commencement condition is not obtained, that would be a reason for refusal.
Okay, and this hasn't actually been part of the debate, but I know on site there was some discussion about materials, about a condition on materials. I don't know if anybody would like to. Yeah, I think Nick was saying that he would be happy to put on a condition that we get some material samples and then we condition those materials. And also just to say that, of course, Griff has made clear that we would be conditioning the use class, but there could always, if things change, it will be a question of bringing an application for a change of use. So nothing's ever completely ruled out in planning. Okay, so does everybody understand that what you'd be voting on is to delegate to the... Would you want to set it out?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So you're voting to grant planning permission for the reasons as outlined, which is from Councillor Ryder, which is that in members' opinion, the benefits, the public benefits in the economic growth education provision outweighs the harm to the heritage assets, and you think the design is acceptable in this situation. You'll be delegating the conditions to officers, but they will include a condition on restricting the use class. You will also be delegating, although you probably don't need to because it's in the Constitution, but the approval would be subject to a planning obligation to secure payment towards the mitigation schemes towards the SACs.
Okay, I think we're all clear on that. So can we go to a vote? It'll be button 1 for yes, button 2 for no, button 3 if you want to do neither of those. If you want to abstain, which I don't see the point of, but anyway. So 1 for yes, 2 for no, okay?
Got John Callahan's hand up.
Yes, John. Oh. Yeah, are your lights flashing? In which case you can press the button.
Thank you.
Okay. You should be coming up as voted. There we go. Okay, and that is unanimous. Okay. Right. And thank you to the applicant for attending and speaking. And now we move on to the next item, which is item 5, budget monitoring report for quarter 1, 2025-26. Any questions on this? I think it's all pretty self-explanatory. And Griff, don't want to make any comments particularly, do you? No?
Any if members have any questions?
No. Okay. So the decision is the committee resolves to note the outturn forecast for the general fund revenue budget for this committee. Anybody wish to propose that? Gary and seconder? Dave? Obviously no debate, I presume. So please raise your hand if you're in favour. That's unanimous. And then item 6, biodiversity net gain monitoring fees. John Chaplin's going to do this, introduce this one. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll just be quick. So, as you see in the report, members, we're seeking to introduce monitoring fees for biodiversity net gain. Biodiversity net gain, BNG, is a requirement on planning applications, particularly major projects, but also minors. So what we're looking for as part of our effective monitoring to make sure we get those positive outcomes is to what requires rather officer input and work. So what we're seeking is a monitoring fee to recover the costs of the work that we're doing. BNG is still a new area, so we're still learning. So what we've also included in the papers is that ability to review the figures so that we can take the learning about how much time and officer work it involves and reflect that in the figures going forward should we need to. Officers, we're happy that this meets all the required tests for a planning obligation. The fee schedule we've set out in the report reflects the size of the site and also the complexity of the habitat that they're proposing. Therefore, what we're seeking is the introduction of these monitoring fees within planning legal agreements and then that authority to review and update each year to reflect the actual costs and time it takes to do the work, so that we've got those up-to-date figures going forward each year.
Yes, Carol.
I've got a question, John, please. On top of page 50, which is your scale of charges, is there any scope for maybe making the small sites cheaper and the larger sites more expensive? I do understand that you've based it on costs, but is there any way of evening it out so maybe small sites don't have to pay quite as much?
Yeah, what we've looked at is how much time it would take. So what we've done is directs, this is how much it would cost. So we could look to do that, but that's not the proposal we're putting forward at this time.
In particular, I was wondering if it was possible to exempt local community groups who want to do, and maybe town and parish councils who want to do a very small development on a small site. Is it legally possible to do, give an exemption for particular groups that are not profit making?
Well, it's up to us to set the fee schedule that we want, and it would be for us to decide if we wanted to give those exemptions, but that obviously comes at a cost to the authority.
Sorry, so you couldn't make that up by charging more elsewhere, I think is what I'm saying, really.
The fees have to be on only a cost recovery basis, so it would be difficult to charge another site to cover the costs of an exemption for someone else.
Thank you.
Yeah, as someone who's married to a director of ecology, I tell you that going and taking a look at a small site isn't necessarily always cheaper than taking a look at a big site. There's travel costs and reports and that kind of thing. It's the cost can add up a lot. Yes, Griff wants to come in.
Sorry, I shouldn't really admit this, I was only partially listening, but just to clarify, we are talking about fees for BNG monitoring where an application has been subject to BNG. So the smallest of applications may be exempt from BNG. So I just wanted to clarify that we're only talking about those applications where BNG applies, if that helps.
I do realise that, but there are some sites on which it does apply, which are big, small enough to be developed, maybe for a village hall or something like that.
Yeah, Dave.
It was two questions. Two questions, please, John, if I may. One is there any guidance or controls on the amount of charging? Or can we pretty much charge what we like, subject to the constraint about cost recovery? And the second is, should we provide some guidance to the leadership for future increases around CPI or RPI or any other kind of framework that effectively bakes in future increases in addition to discretion?
There's no sort of guidance on what the amounts. In effect, if you can demonstrate that it's cost that much, you could justify a higher fee. what we've done is an exercise that this is how much we think it will cost. So they're the sort of figures we're working with. We've included a index-linked inflation figure, but what we're also asking for is that review mechanism so that we can look at it each year to make sure that we're keeping up to date with how much work is involved or the complexity, and we can look at those figures again. We have done a sort of benchmarking exercise so that we can see that where we sit with our neighbouring authorities, and in effect, Cotswolds is slightly cheaper, but Tewkesbury is slightly higher in general terms. I was going to show them on the screen, but I haven't plugged in. But then I've also got another example of Buckinghamshire, which is significantly higher than us. So there is a range of different, in effect, numbers, but we think where we've set it at the moment reflects our best estimate of the costs that it will incur to us to carry out this work.
Just in view of the fact that it is a bit of a guess, albeit an educated guess, I wonder whether the first review could happen earlier than 12 months, just in case we've undershot. Maybe 6 months for the first review.
Members, you are, entitled to put into your resolution what you may, but I think the concern with a shorter period is the lack of data to justify that. So BNG is still very much coming in and we're finding our way with it. If I'm 100% honest, I think if we did it in 6 months, we'd be saying we're still finding our way. We don't know what the difference is. We need to have a long enough period for there to be some substantive data for it to come in.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree that we need to make sure we've got the resources to monitor BNG, because monitoring is absolutely vital. Making sure that what's needed is actually done and stays mitigating for as long as it possibly can. Although the general direction with national government with ecology and protected species isn't encouraging, but there we go. While I'm on the microphone, can I just check with Kath? Were you here for the vote on budget monitoring?
No.
Okay, so just for the record then, so that wasn't, I think I said it was unanimous, but okay, that's fine. It's okay for you not to be here for that item. Obviously, I think everybody's aware, and I think Moira's aware, that if it was actually determining an application, then everybody needs to stay in the chamber, but that was just for the record, so it's not noted as unanimous. Otherwise, the world will come collapsing down around our ears and the sky will fall in if I got it wrong. Right, okay, so we need to, I think, resolve to approve the introduction of a Section 106 BNG monitoring fee charging schedule as detailed in John's report, and delegate authority to the Strategic Director of Place to review and update these fees. I think we've accepted that initially anyway. It needs to be 12 months before we review at the start of each financial year to reflect the actual costs in providing that service. Anybody wish to propose that? Dave and seconder. That's a second from the chair. So can we just do a hands up on that? All those in favour? That one is unanimous. Okay. And I think that's the end of the